Dear brothers and sisters, the saints in Christ, welcome to a new episode. A very light episode before we start a heavy series. Today's episode titled Esther is the only book in the Holy Bible that you will never find the name of God mentioned in it. This is not my speech, but this is a title of a short clip for the fiery preacher, Father Ermia Boules. I leave the link of the full clip, which is about 3 minutes and a bit, in the description. I encourage you to watch the whole thing, because in this short clip has actually a few mistakes. I'll comment on 2 in this one. One I'll make it very quick, and the other one I'll go in more detail. In this short clip, he mentions and assures that the Israelites, when they were exiled in Babylon, they never mentioned the name of God there because it's foreign land, and also they never sang the Lord over there, which is not true, by the way, from the perspective of Orthodox. So first of all, I'll answer quickly whether the Israelites sang in the foreign land in Babylon or not. He says it is not, but actually he takes Psalm 137 as a reference that yes, they didn't mention, they did not sing in the foreign land. Psalm 137 starts with by the rivers of Babylon. And there is a verse that says, how shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? So he based his allegation on this. But my answer to this, by the way, looks like the fiery preacher does not know that actually the Coptic Orthodox Church believes in the Annex of Book of Daniel, and they inserted in chapter 3 in the Book of Daniel more than 65 verses called the praise or the song of the 3 young men. And it said this is what they actually sang when they were in the fire, when they were thrown in the fire. So this means actually he doesn't know what he's talking about. This is the objective of this episode, that they don't know and they still believe them and they trust them. I would like to add to this also, looks like the fiery preacher doesn't know that in the month of Kiyak there is also a special Greek, not Hebrew, song in the Tasbihah of Kiyak. This song starts with a long, great melody. لحن named Tenain. It looks that he doesn't know. I don't think that he knows it, but yes, I know it. Yes, I was like an A1 deacon when I used to be in the Orthodox Church, plus also a servant of the word. Anyway, so now I finished this one with him. No, they were singing. You said that they were singing, you guys. So you don't know that the Annex of Daniel includes about 65 verses only. It say now the 3 young men began to sing, and the big song, 65 verses in the Book of Daniel chapter 3 according to the Coptic Orthodox version. All right. The second point in this short clip, which I will go in detail, that he assured the following, that the name of God is not mentioned in the Book of Esther. So let's watch this short clip and come back again.
هقول لكم حاجة تاني. لما ربنا أمر بني إسرائيل إن يرجعوا بعد 70 سنة ما هد نبوخذ نصر الهيكل، يرجعوا ويبنوا الهيكل ويبنوا اورشليم. سبط يهوذا وبنيامين رجعوا، باقي الأسباط ما رجعوش. في ناس قديسين من باقي الأسباط. مين هما؟ مردخاي وأستير. امسكوا سفر كامل اسمه سفر أستير، تلاقوا ربنا وقف جنبهم وحماهم وحفظهم، لكن لا تجد اسم الله في سفر أستير أبدا، لأنهم عايشين في أرض غريبة.
Maybe I read what actually he said in English, because it was said in Arabic, because it's important to know that if you did not understand it. He said the following: take a full book. This is very important to me. Take a full book in the Bible named the Book of Esther. You will see that God stood by them, he protected them, he preserved them, but you will never find the name of God in the Book of Esther at all. Why? Because they were living in a foreign land. The full clip is asserting this. When they were in a foreign land, they did not mention the name of God and they did not sing. But now I prove that he doesn't know what he's talking about, because according to Orthodox, there is a big song, and they say it in the during Kiyak, and also they say it in the Abu Galamsis, the night after. Everyone knows about where Abu Galamsis is. After they finish the Good Friday, they go for a bit like a rest, about a few hours, then they go back overnight. So they mention this. Anyway, why I'm going to focus in the Book of Esther? Because of the following. Because also another very famous priest in the Coptic Church, as we speak, named the Father Antoninus Fikri, and he got plenty of books very similar to the books of Father Tedros. He also mentions something very strange about this book. He mentions that actually, yes, the Book of Esther, the name of God is not mentioned, but actually it is more complicated than that, as we're going to read. What I got is from the internet, the site of Takla site. Of course, it's in Arabic, but I translated you into English. So let's read what Father Antoninus Fikri says in the introduction of the Book of Esther. All right, then we'll comment on both fathers. He says the following: there are two opinions about the author of this book. Good. It was stated in the Talmud. Talmud is like a traditional Jewish book, that the writer of this book is the Great Council headed by Ezra, which we think it is the right thing, but they don't like Ezra because if Ezra, this means there is no annex to the Book of Esther, that they believe in the annex of the Book of Esther. Ezra didn't had the book up to chapter 10 verse 3. Ezra. And he says also St. Augustine believes that it was written by Ezra the scribe. Okay, but of course they don't like that. However, many of the fathers, watch the word many of the fathers believe what Josephus, the Jewish historian, said. What did he say? That it was composed by Mordecai himself. Among these fathers, because he said many, among these fathers was Saint Clement of Alexandria, and he did not mention another one. So he said Saint Augustine says by Ezra, but he's not happy, of course, with that. And after that, he says many fathers says it is not by Ezra, it is by someone else. And he said many, but he mentioned also one name, like the Saint Clement of Alexandria. Two things here. Number one, when he says many, he did not mention more than one name. So how can I trust him? Because he mentioned one name, said Ezra, and now mentioned one name, said not Ezra. Because I could see, I could do the vice versa. I could say many said it's Ezra, and one of them is Saint Augustine, and I said, but Saint Clement said not Ezra. So first of all, he is lying on this. Second thing, now we notice, since we started this channel, there is no one topic that the fathers did not contradict in it. All right? So now we can see the fathers contradicted. Who wrote the Book of Esther? Saint Augustine says something and Saint Clement says something. Also, I'll go quickly, but I will not go in detail. When we studied John 6 about the blood and the body of Jesus, whatever, the father did not agree on this. Did not agree on what type of the body is the one that they eat in the mass. The father contradicted in this. Fathers also contradicted what happened to the blood and body after being eaten. They did not they agree what happens to them, like in the digestive system. Father did not agree on whatever called the authority of binding and loosening. Father did not agree on in the book of Genesis chapter 6 who are the sons of God and who are the girls of men. Father did not agree like whether God accepted or did not accept the intercession of Abraham in Sodom and Gomorrah. So dear brother and sister, when they tell you follow the fathers, then ask them, first of all, fathers did not agree. So which father you follow? Like now we see one father said Ezra wrote the book. This is Saint Augustine. And now we say no, it is not Augustine. Saint Clement of Alexandria said not Augustine. So which father you will follow then? Or you would like now to choose whichever like suits your own desire. All right. So dear brother and sister, do not believe them. They are deceiving you. They cheating you. All right. So let's continue. So he mentioned only one name. All right. Now let's continue. Now this is a complicated one. What confirms the last point, which is not by Ezra, but by someone else? They would like to keep away from Ezra. If they believe that the writer is Ezra, then they should stop at verse 3, chapter 10, which is like the Jews and those evangelical people, right? So, what does he say now? What confirms that the last point of view that the writer is not Ezra is that the author of the book is Mordechai himself, is verse 9:20, which states that Mordechai wrote these things and sent them in letters to all the Jews in all the countries of the King Ahasuerus. All right, so let's go in detail. There is another proof. This is what he says. Another proof that this book is written by Mordechai. This second, the most important thing, he would like to go away from Ezra. There is another proof that this book is written by Mordechai, which means not by Ezra. What is this proof? The name of God was not mentioned in this book. So what is the relationship between Mordechai and the name of God is not mentioned? He will explain this. All right. But before I go, I will ask, what happens if after a while we found actually the name of God is mentioned? That will be a disaster, right? Because now it's all allegation that Mordechai wrote it, and to prove that Mordechai wrote it, he said, we know that Mordechai is the person who wrote it because the name of God is not mentioned. Why is that? He will explain. I repeat again, there is another proof that this book is written by Mordechai. The name of God was not mentioned in the book because the writer, that is Mordechai, did not prefer to challenge the feelings of the king and his entourage, or that the book was written in a period which when it was dangerous to mention the name of the Lord. And from chapter 10 verse 2 we find that the news was recorded in the government records, and most likely the author got his information from the government records, that is from the documents of the Persian palace. And it is clear that the writer is a Jew who lived in Persia and has completed knowledge of the names of the king's advisors and the details of the royal palace. He also used the Persian words and writes accurately about the details of the palace's furnishings in Shushan. He saw the palace himself and recorded these subtle matters. All of these things indicate that the writer of the book is Mordechai, who was appointed by King Ahasuerus as his prime minister, and he is the one who wrote and distributed these things. As an official, he avoided mentioning the name of God, so as not to provoke his enemies around him. If Ezra was the writer of the book, he would not have hesitated while writing in Jerusalem to mention God's name in the book. However, despite the name of God is not mentioned in the book of Esther, it is clear that the writer explains and the events that testify that the finger of God was moving the events to save his people. This is the introduction. Now I would like to assert the following. He put all this to assure not Ezra. Okay, that's fine. But it is Mordechai. Okay. And to prove it was Mordechai, he said, to prove that Mordechai is the one who wrote it, the name of God is not mentioned there. Why? Because Mordechai was an official person or whatever, and not to provoke the king and all the other people, he was very keen to avoid mentioning the name of God. Is this really true? Is this what the Orthodox believe in? They are Orthodox or became Protestant now. Because yes, up to chapter 10, verse 3, you will not find the name of God. But in fact, if you go to chapter 10, verse 4, which is the first verse in the Annex of Esther, which Orthodox fight for it and say it is part of the book. The book is not written by Ezra but by someone else. Why? Because they added to the Book of Esther. If you go to episode number 131, you will find actually they added to chapter 10, I think about 10 extra verses on the top of the 3. So chapter 10 I think goes up to verse 13 or even a bit more, plus another 6 chapters. So actually it is 16 chapters. All right. But actually what a shame to both fathers that actually the very first verse of the Annex, believe it or not, got the name of God. My goodness. What do you mean, Sami? Yes. Verse 4, which is the very first verse of the Annex, because actually the right book that we got it as evangelical people and even the Jewish people goes up to chapter 10 verse 3. So as of chapter 10 verse 4 starts the Annex. Chapter 10 verse 4 itself contains the name of God. So let's read this together. But brother Sami, don't make a big fuss for mentioning the name of God only like once. No. More than 10 times. 14 times. In chapter 10 itself, 3 times. So it looks to me that those Orthodox hegemons, famous guys, they don't know what they're talking about. They assert the name of God is not mentioned in the book of Esther. Yes, up to verses 3, chapter 10 is not mentioned there, but this is the Protestant version. But for the Orthodox version, you must go to the Annex as well, because it said the full book. Full book starts from where? From chapter 10, verse 4. First verse, got the name of God. So dear brother and sister, they don't know what they're talking about. They're cheating you, as we'll see now. All right? So let's now read the Annex, and we'll see whether it's mentioned or not. So, then Mordechai said, this is the first verse of the Annex, which is verse number 4, chapter 10. God, my God, those guys, Orthodox, would fight for it, and they missed it. Haven't you read the Annex of Esther that you're fighting for? First verse, the name of God is there. So, if the name of God is there, who is the writer? Mr. Hegumen Antoninus. Who is the writer then? So he said, not Ezra, scared of Ezra. You try to prove, no, it's definitely Mordechai, because the name of God is not mentioned there. So now we found the name of God is mentioned there. So who is the writer? You don't know. Really? Yes, you don't know. Maybe you ask the fiery preacher, he will tell you, oh, Jibril wrote it later on. Okay? So let's read together. Then Mordechai said, God has done these things. Esther chapter 10 verse 4 according to the Orthodox version. Now let's continue. Therefore he, with capital H, made 2 lots, one for the people of God and another for all the Gentiles. What about this one? Again, chapter 10 verse 10. So they didn't even read the very first few verses of the Annex. Next one. And these 2 lots came at the hour and the time and the day of judgment before God among the nations. Esther 10 verse 11. 3 times, and this is only in the first bit of Annex. All right, let's continue. Then they cried unto God, and upon their cry, and it were from a little fountain was made a great flood, even much water. Esther 11 verse 10. Now when Mordecai, who had seen this dream and what God had determined to do, was awake and bear his dream in mind, and until night by all means was distressed to know it. Esther 11:12, saying, O Lord, 2 times, the King Almighty, for the whole world is in thy power, and if you has appointed to save Israel, there is no man that can go against thee. For Almighty God has turned to joy unto them the day wherein the chosen people would have perished. Esther 16:18. So, dear brother and sister, those guys, they don't know what they're talking about, and you still put much trust in them. So they fight for the Annex of Esther, and to prove that yes, the Annex is true, definitely not Ezra, but now to Mordecai, and to prove that it is Mordecai, the name of God is not there. But actually, the name of God is mentioned there 14 times. So this means what? According to his theory, this means not Mordecai who wrote the book. So who wrote it then? Big question mark. You don't know. In fact, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you believe in. Or you became Protestant and nobody knows. Because if you mention the name of God is not mentioned there, yes, it is not mentioned there according to the proper book that we have it up to verse 3, chapter 10. So have they turned it into Protestant and you don't know, or they don't know what they're talking about? All right. Now, dear brother and sister, before I close, I got like a short spiritual message to you. All right? From the book of John, chapter 12. But although he, this is Jesus, had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him. Why? Because actually there's a prophecy that many people will see the Lord and they will not believe in him. That the word of Isaiah, the prophet, might be fulfilled. So even Isaiah, about 700 years before Christ, prophesied that the people will see and they will not believe. Fulfilled, which he spoke, Lord, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore, they could not believe. Again, because Isaiah said again, this in the book of Isaiah again, chapter 6, please go and read it. He, that is God, has blinded their eyes. What does it mean? God blinded the eyes of people. We'll come to this later. He blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, lest they should understand with their hearts and return, so that I should heal them. So does this mean actually God doesn't want people to understand? He wants them not to be saved? No, of course not. But if you read in the book of the book of Isaiah chapter 6, the Lord sent Isaiah and he told him, go and speak to them. But I know beforehand that they will not listen to you. So that's actually the message of today. God definitely knocks on the door of each one. In other words, the Holy Spirit convicts every single person. But some people, they take it lightly. So you come to a point when you do not respond at all to the voice of God. You might read something in the Bible. You might hear something, some news. You might hear like a song. You might see a situation and you feel in your heart that you need to change your situation with God. But sometimes you might give it like a blind eye and a deaf ear. So time after time, you know what happens? You will hear and you will not understand. You will see and you will not believe. And your heart will not feel that you need like to change your situation or position towards God. I hope that you will not reach this point, because I have seen many people, they reach this point. And maybe if you read the comments, sometimes you'll see some people definitely, they already reached this point. You spoke to them, or I speak to them, and I prove, for example, to them that in the first 300 years of the church, there was no priesthood, no altars, no incense, no sacraments, no icons, no pictures, nothing at all like that. And they still say, no, we don't worship them, we honor them. Or some people, they tell you the Bible doesn't have everything. What do you reckon? What do they think about this? And you're still fighting for this. You say, no, there is sacraments and I can prove it from the Bible. I can prove everything from the Bible, by the way. Anything, I can prove it from the Bible. Muslims, they say, come now and say, there is hundreds of prophecies about Muhammad in the Bible. Yeah, they twisted stuff anyway. So please, dear brother and sister, wake up. Wake up. These guys cheating you. They don't know what they're talking about. They fight for the annexes, and now they say the Bible doesn't, the Book of Esther doesn't have the word of God in it, and it is mentioned even the very first verse. This means what? Actually, they are blinded, and you follow them. And if a blind leads a blind, what happens? Both of them will go into the ditch. So actually, you will pay for your disobedience of God. You will pay for the conviction of the Holy Spirit when you give it like a deaf ear and a blind eye. And unfortunately, the Lord said to Isaiah, go and blind them, their eyes, and and harden their hearts. What does it mean? Harden their hearts. Like, yes, talk to them, and I know beforehand they will reject it. So the heart will not feel it, and then they will perish. Like, no way they would be able to say not guilty. So be careful, because it could happen. By the way, I wish not. Okay. If you can share this video on your own social media, if you have, this would be great. Also, if you can forward to some other people, would be great. Give it a like if you think it's worth it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. And unless the Lord comes, we'll meet again in a new series. May the Lord bless you all. Salam al-Masih wa kun ma'akum.